Good morning. I'm Father Alexander. Welcome to St. Peter's in Hove. And today we're going to take our 188th step in our walking tour through the Bible. And we're going to look at three Psalms. These are 104, 105, 106. Now, all three Psalms are what are called midrashim, a word with which I'm sure you're familiar. It basically means a retelling of a biblical story, almost like a sermon on a biblical story, drawing out the moral point of the biblical story. And the biblical story is essentially the history of Israel. If we start with Psalm 104, this is about the story of Exodus. And so it tells us what God did for his chosen people right at the beginning. When they were few in number, a handful of strangers in the land, when they wandered from country to country, from one kingdom and nation to another, he allowed no one to oppress them. He admonished kings on their account, do not touch these I have anointed, do no harm to any of my prophets. So the chosen people were the chosen people right from the beginning. I won't go through the whole psalm, but do look at it for yourself. O children of Abraham his servant, O sons of the Jacob he chose. So they are the chosen people. That's one of the main themes of the Old Testament, election. God has chosen his people. And we, Christians, we too are the chosen people of God. God has specially picked us out to be his own. Now, of course, in the Christian sense, God has chosen everybody, but in the sense that we've been baptized and we're in the Catholic Church, we're specially chosen and we have been providentially blessed to be the children of God. He has specially privileged us. We mustn't forget this at all. Now, then, of course, it explains how God defeats the Egyptians and how and then he settles them in the land of Canaan. So it's all the things that God has done for his chosen people in Psalm 104. We too should reflect, I think, in prayer. One of the first steps in prayer when you come into church is you sit there and you think of all the things that God has given you. And you may be there for a very long time if you think in great detail about all the things God has given you. Each one of us is well fed, for example. How lucky we are compared, for example, with those who suffer starvation every day. And so it goes on. Well, then let's go to Psalm 105. Now, Psalm 105 is actually about first we had election. This is about apostasy. The people chosen by God then don't keep their side of the bargain. They don't act like the chosen people. They forget. And the word forget comes up quite a lot in Psalm 105. They forgot the greatness of your love. At the Red Sea, defied the Most High, yet he saved them, etc. But they soon forgot his deeds and would not wait upon his will. They yielded to their cravings in the desert and put God to the test in the wilderness. So, one of the things that we are to do as the chosen people is remember all the things that God has done for us, to remember them, to call them to mind, to make the past deeds of God in our regard a present reality. That's what remembering is. It is bringing something from the past into the present and feeling its effect in the present. The poet Wordsworth, of course, is the great exponent of that. It is um, emotion recollected in tranquility. So let's remember all the things that God has done. Let's remember that these deeds of God in the past are also deeds that affect our present. And of course, let's remember Jesus Christ's greatest commandment: do this in memory of me. He commands us to remember. We are people who are called upon to remember. And that is why the word tradition is central to Catholicism. Anyway, um, these people forget God, and it gets worse. They fashioned a calf at Horeb, that's Sinai, and worshipped an image of metal, exchanging the God who was their glory for the image of a bull that eats grass. They forgot, again, we have that key word, they forgot the God who was their savior, who had done such great things in Egypt, such portents in the land of Ham, such marvels at the Red Sea. Well, this is a wonderful phrase. They forsook the God They're exchanging the God who was their glory for the image of a bull that eats grass. Apostasy. We too, the people of today, have forsaken the God who is our glory, Jesus Christ, for the image of a bull that eats grass, for something that is not Jesus Christ, something that we think is good, but is certainly not as good as Jesus Christ. So we have so many Christians who've gone herring after the false prophet Karl Marx. We've got so many people who've been herring off after other false prophets who are explicitly religious or pseudo-religious, Mary Baker Eddy, Joseph Smith, and all those others. And of course, going right back in the history of the church, we have the great apostasy of those Christians who decided to become Mohammedan. The whole point is that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, who has revealed to us the whole truth, cannot be bettered. One of the great articles of one of the great documents produced by Cardinal Ratzinger when he was at the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith was the article on liberation theology. He said, why do we need to enrich Christian doctrine with Marxism when we could just mine down into the infinite riches of Christ? Christ doesn't need a prop from secular and indeed materialistic philosophy such as Marxism. Now, we know with the episode of the golden calf, Moses had gone up the mountain. It was Aaron who gave them the golden calf. This is not a coincidence. When the great apostasy comes, and it keeps on coming, it comes in waves, it's always led by the clergy. Yes, really, I'm serious about this. Luther was a priest. Arius, or Arius as we used to call him, was a priest. Nestorius was an archbishop. Cranmer was a priest. I don't think Calvin was a priest. I don't think Zwingli was a priest. And so it goes on. And indeed, even in our own time, there have been priests and bishops and even cardinals who have led us astray with their false teaching. Don't accept imitations, as they used to say in a famous advertising campaign. They forsook the God who was their glory. The image of a bull that eats grass, the contempt is there, isn't it? And the people, when they commit apostasy, always go herring after something that is false, something that is superficially attractive, something that is essentially a swizz. Remember, all that glisters is not gold. Shakespeare. And please remember all those African chieftains and Native American chieftains who gave away their lands to the white settlers or white arrivals in exchange for beads and mirrors and weapons. In other words, a bad bargain. Now, so then, of course, God rebukes his people. Time after time, he rescued them. But in their malice, they dared to defy him and sank low through their guilt. In spite of this, he paid heed to their distress, so often as he heard their cry. He is infinitely patient with us, despite our constant apostasies. And remember, most of us won't ever apostatize, but we will sin. Our hearts will wander off, but he's infinitely patient with us, constantly calling us back. And the psalm ends, O Lord our God, save us, bring us together from among the nations. Clearly, the psalmist is in exile in Babylon, and this is what's happened. The whole nation has splintered, the whole nation has been crushed because it didn't hold to what holds a nation together, the glue of the nation, faith in God. And now we get to this last psalm, number which we're considering today, 106. And this one's a rather beautiful one because it's about how God puts things back together again. And incidentally, people always bring about division. Dante put the people who brought about division in the deepest pit of hell. That's where he put all the sowers of discord and indeed the heretics, those who split the church. God is the one who brings back together. The heretics are the ones who split the church and damage the church of Christ. God is the great repairman. And of course, you see here we have the people of God who've been scattered. Some wandered in the desert, in the wilderness, finding no way to a city they could dwell in. Hungry they were and thirsty, their soul was fainting within them. Then they cried to the Lord in their need, and he rescued them. Okay. Some lay in darkness and in gloom, prisoners in misery and chains, having defied the words of God and spurned the counsels of the Most High. He crushed their spirit with toil. They stumbled. There was no one to help. Then they cried to the Lord in their need, and he rescued them. And then we had some were sick on account of their guilt, and afflicted on account of their sins, and afflicted on account of it. They had a loathing for every food. We've been there, haven't we? Came close to the gate of death. Sounds like a very serious hangover. Then they cried to the Lord in their need, and he rescued them. Notice this constant refrain. Some sailed to the sea in ships. And remember, the Israelites were not sailors, so it was a really stupid thing to do to get in a boat. Oh, you wouldn't catch me doing that. A good Israelite would say. Don't forget, the eccentric prophet Jonah took a boat, a ship of Tarshish, which marks him out as a bit of a whack job. Some sailed to the sea in ships to trade on the mighty waters. Right? These men have seen the Lord's deeds, the wonders he does in the deep, for he spoke, he summoned the gale, etc. They staggered, reeled like drunken men. Bad channel crossing, for all their skill was gone. Then they cried to the Lord in their need, and he rescued them from all their distress. Let them thank the Lord for his love. Well, we all like sheep have gone astray. So let us cry to the Lord in our need, and he will rescue us from all our distress. He is the one who changes, as the psalm goes on, he changes streams into a desert and springs of water into thirsty ground, but he changes desert into streams. The church is very divided, and I mean by ever since the Reformation, the church has been very divided, but God will put it together again. God is the great repairman. God will put things together again, but we have to turn to God in our distress. All human endeavors to found the kingdom of God without God, Marxism being the great one, will end in abject failure. Only when we turn to God will we have success. Only the Lord will give success to his hands. And as the psalmist ends, whoever is wise, let him heed these things and consider the love of the Lord, because there ain't no other way to go. All the best then. Bye.